Hey, everybody, this is David Hood and Grayson Mann with the Orange Crush podcast, the open date edition. Of course, the Tigers are off this week. We have a special guest today, ESPN, ACC Network analyst, whatever you want to call him, all around good guy, Tom Luginbill. Just want to start out by saying this. First of all, thank you to Herb Tyler and Chick-fil-A of Seneca and Clemson for being our title sponsor this season. Check them out for all your tailgate needs. Go by and see them just during the day. It's great food. Lisa Nason, Nason Accounting in Greenville. But Tom, first of all, thanks for being here. I always try to, if we have a special guest, throw out a trivia question to Grayson.
All right.
Catch him a little bit by surprise. So, Grayson, if you ask people in the Southeast who've watched Tom Luginbill for a long time, and you say, where did he go to school? Where did he play football? Around here, most people are going to go Georgia Tech, right? Is that what you probably think that? Other people might go, I remember him from Eastern Kentucky. But here's your trivia question. Tom Luginbill is a national championship winning quarterback.
Oh no.
What school in college did he win a national championship?
Okay, if you can give me the year, I'm more likely to be able to solve this than just trying to like scour through the decades.
1993.
1993. Oh, that doesn't still help me. Oh my goodness. Okay. And I can't stall for the audience. So maybe David, if you got another sponsor you can read so I can like quickly Google search this and cheat it. Um,
There's no
I'm gonna
cheating, Tom.
No
Tom, you want to
cheating
help
in
him out with this
football.
one?
Yeah. So I'm one of those stories of somebody that was not recruited at all out of high school. At all. No offers, zero. And so I chose to go the junior college route. And in 2 years went let's see, 22-1 in my sophomore year at Palomar College in San Diego. Won 11-0, won the junior college national championship in 1993, and ended up being the all-time leading passer in the history of college football nationally. And after that, just 2 short years from being removed from high school, I was recruited by everybody. It was crazy. Like, just sometimes you just got to take a different path to where you want to get, right?
absolutely. So
Yeah, this is pre-portal. So like everybody's like, well, why did you go to three schools? Well, I was an academic qualifier and I had to go to junior college. Then when you leave junior college, you don't get to stay there forever. So you got to go somewhere. And so I ended up going to Georgia Tech, ended up being the starter there my junior year. And then they had a coaching, not so much the coaching change, but the scheme change. Went to far more of a quarterback run heavy scheme. This is before Paul Johnson. This was the start of George O'Leary. And in those days, unlike today, you either had to sit if you were going to go from Power Five to Power Five and sit out a year. And I had a redshirt year, so I could have done that. Or you could play right away if you went down. So I transferred down to Eastern Kentucky to play for the legendary Roy Kidd, and the rest is history.
you were in the transfer portal before it was cool, Tom. So
Uh,
that's got to
I, I
be
guess so. Yeah, I guess I kind of was.
All right, so you guys led in with a great opening last week. Of course, you and the great West Durham, man. You guys have. I sent him a message after the Western Carolina NC State game. I said, you guys have known each other for such a long time. Stepping in with each other in the booth, just it seemed seamless. It was like you guys had worked together, in that capacity for 20 years. You guys had a great opening to the Clemson and App State game the other night, kind of talking about Cade Klubnik and some of the passes he had missed against Georgia,
Yeah.
some of the plays he had missed. And then the game starts and the kid goes 24 for 26.
Well, first of all, let me. I thank you for saying that about Wes and I. We've known each other for years, but we've never done a game together. And I
Yes.
actually walked. I walked out of the stadium, the Carter Finley Stadium, and before we were heading to go do Georgia Tech 2 days later, and I'm like, dude, if anybody was watching, you'd have thought we've been doing games for 5 years. So I kind of felt the same way you did. So fast forward to the Clemson game. So once I got through all of the film and all of the tape, and all of the noise was about where are the explosive plays and where is this and where is that. And I started going through the tape. I'm like, forget the explosive plays. How about you hit the gimmies? How about you connect on the ones that are right in front of you? Right. And that was my biggest concern And I went through and I charted everything. And there was probably another 6 or 7 instances. We couldn't use them all in the open, but we basically charted 3 where Cade Klubnik has the guy open at the line to gain, easy routine throws, and won't throw it to him. And so my pushback with our crew all week is, okay, forget the whole lack of explosive things. Let's crawl before we walk and start hitting the easy ones. And I had a conversation with Dabo about that on Friday. And so when we put that open together, and then you watch like the first 5 to 6 plays, he does exactly what he did not do against Georgia. He was firing, he was anticipating, decisive. The ball was coming out of his hand. And if it was there, he took it. It looked like an entirely different player for the entirety of the game. And then all of a sudden, lo and behold, you start hitting the easy ones. Now the ones over the top start manifesting themselves. So they play into each other. And if you're going to miss or not going to throw the early ones, then nobody's going to back off you.
And I think for just the amount of eyes on that game, it felt so unique because it felt like it was a little tense in Clemson this week, waiting for
Yeah.
something to happen, waiting for something to give. And David and I were thinking about this. We're like, okay, we're thinking Wesco. There's a chance the kid rolls out there early and say, why not go give him a shot? And they really did. And I think
Twice.
for Klubnik, and you talk about the gimme plays. I know that the first 2 plays, I think it was total of probably -1 yards, but it was completions, got Klubnik involved and got him in a little bit of a groove early, and then they hit the bomb to Wesco. And so, Tom, as you're watching this game unfold, just being a quarterback yourself, is there certain tells with quarterbacks you go, okay, this guy's feeling it today?
Yeah, I could tell he was feeling it because there was no indecisiveness, and there was a lot of indecisiveness the week before. He just wasn't seeing it. I felt he kind of got shook a little bit. Now, full disclosure, App State did not choose to come after him. They did not. He had a clean pocket throughout the night. For whatever reason, it was not their mode of operation to pressure him and things of that nature. Maybe they didn't feel they'd hold up well on the back end. But just his body language and how quickly the ball was coming out of his hand, it was evident early. And then, I think the other thing that was interesting, I don't know if you guys got a feel for this during the game, but honestly, I think Dabo Swinney told that receiver group, hey, listen, we've given you this opportunity and you this opportunity and you this opportunity, and it ain't working out, boys. So here's what's going to happen. Now we're going to give number 1 an opportunity. We're going to give number 12 an opportunity. And if they play well, they're going to keep playing. Okay. So did you notice how when that game, the longer it went on, all of a sudden, Cole Turner's making plays, Adam Randall's making plays, Stelato's making plays. And it's almost like it lit a match, right? It lit a fire under their feet. We better start producing or we're going to be standing over next to coach on the sideline. And that's exactly how the thing played out because those young guys were as advertised. And so now it gets the other group saying, uh-oh, I'm going to be sitting over here on the sideline if I don't get my act together.
Amazing what a motivating thing that playing time is.
I think it is here. Here's what it is. When you have really good players, which Clemson does, or an Alabama or a Georgia and Ohio State, there's not a lot of motivating that a coach has to do to kick you in the tail to get you going, because all you have to do is look around at your own position and realize if I'm not performing, that guy's going to take my job because he's good enough, right? So you create the environment of competition through recruiting and player development, and then the players will work itself out because they'll start to realize that performance is priority number 1 when there are enough talented guys to take your job away. Now, when you're at another place where you're head and shoulders above the next guy, you're going to be able to get away with a lot more, right? But that's not the case at a place like Clemson.
This game started to go on, and one of the numbers that I love to look at, I'm a stats guy, is 350 total yards. Back when Clemson had guys by the name of what was it, Deshaun Watson, is that a guy?
Yeah.
Kelly Bryant, Trevor Lawrence. Remember those people? 350, man. Clemson had that midway through the third quarter or earlier than that.
Hmm.
Since then, with DJ, with Cade, 350 is there would be times that I'd say, okay, Clemson had 280 in the first half, but wouldn't crack 350.
Yeah.
350, 371 has kind of been that deal. And all of a sudden you look up and Cade has thrown for 378 in the first half. This offense looked different. You and I had kind of talked about it. Saw some of the pistol, saw some of the sugar huddle against Georgia,
Hmm.
but we didn't see, saw a little bit of the drags, but the middle of the field not used. Now all of a sudden there's digs, there's post, there's
Yep.
motions. What did we see?
Well, that stuff again all starts to open up when the underneath stuff is open and you take it. Because now they're forced to come up and try to take that away. Well, then the middle of the field right behind them is open. It's all about layers in different areas of the field, but one thing sets up another, and I think that once they could tell they were in a rhythm and their quarterback was confident, now as a play caller, you feel a lot better about digging a little deeper into the play sheet. When you're not confident, you're not playing well, you're going to call the game probably tentatively because you're going, oh, can we even do this? Can we get a first down? Well, it was the complete opposite of that on Saturday night. And, here's the reality of Clemson and Clemson on offense. First of all, they're so good on defense. Like, you better get a note from your mother if you're going to play against that defensive front. That is that group is a handful, right? So when you know that you're that good on defense, and they are, then you know you're going to get a few extra possessions a game because they're going to get some free and outs, and it's going to help the offense. So now the question moving forward is this a flash in the pan for Cade Klubnik? Is this the norm? Is this his breakout performance where going from here, this is the guy he's going to be? I don't think anybody knows the answer to that question. We can all hope, if you're a Clemson fan, that that's exactly what he is. Because if that's exactly what he is, I don't see a team in the conference that can beat him, right? Because nobody else has it. Miami's close in terms of having the same roster profile. But that's going to be my most interesting thing is, and I said on air the other night, I bet you Dabo and the staff wish they didn't have a bye this week, because you'd love to have that performance and then carry that momentum right into the next week. And now you have some downtime. And sometimes buys come at the wrong time. This may be one of them. Will it have an adverse effect? I don't know, but I know momentum is hard to carry over for several days or 2 weeks. You can do it with 1 week. But that's what I'm looking for. Every single time Clemson plays, I'm going to be looking for the exact same thing from Cade Klubnik. Is he decisive? Does he show anticipatory traits? Is he taking what the defense gives him? Because if he does that and continues to do that, they're going to be a problem.
One of the things, Tom, that stuck out to me as we're doing the week leading up to App State is we had
Yeah.
an interview with Tristan Lee. And one of the quotes that stuck out was he said that he's more confident in the offense and what this team can do after watching the Georgia film. And I think if you look at that quote alone, you're scratching your head going, well, he scored only 3 points and it seemed
Yeah.
like he couldn't muster much. So where's that confidence coming from? And rewatching the broadcast, something that was pointed out to me was the talk of the continuity that's on this team and the returning
Yeah.
starters on offense. And so when you guys did prep for this game, and obviously when you say Clemson and portal, you might have pitchforks outside your house waiting for you to come outside, and it
Yeah.
becomes a whole deal. But how do you look at how Clemson sort of approached this? Because I think the positive of Clemson's continuity and maybe not being in Florida State and adding different puzzle pieces and hoping it all
All right.
sticks together is that after a Georgia game like that, there is people that know each other. There's leadership. There's,
Yeah.
I stress that word continuity. How important will that be, especially when you're talking about, okay, there's an off week. How do they sort of carry that momentum through a mini dead period? And so, Tom,
Yeah.
how do you see this roster sticking through this? And you had the lowest of lows so far and the highest of highs. Where's that happy medium for this team?
So you bring up a really good point because, and I like to use the phrase hired mercenaries, which when you're going out and you're buying players, that's what they are. The downside to that, and we may be seeing this right now with Florida State, the downside to that is if things don't go well what is that player's loyalty and devotion to the program and the locker room? It's zero, because that's not why he went there. He went there probably for the money, right? And, maybe to, and in fairness, that's not everybody, but it's a vast majority of what's happening in the portal. And so
Right.
when you don't have those pieces that have come in from the outside that were not a fundamental fixture of your foundation from the moment they enrolled, I can see how there can be fracturing, right, if things don't go well. But when you have what Clemson has, and you have a very close-knit group that, listen, hasn't dealt with a ton of failure over the last, 16 years, but people have, they're 30-10 over the last 3 years, and everybody acts like they were 6-6 for the last 3 years, right? It's crazy. And listen, you become a victim of your own success, right? We hit this in the broadcast, but it was so late in the broadcast that it was a friends and family broadcast, meaning that those were the only people left watching. The thing about the portal as it relates to Clemson, and I agree with Dabo Swinney on this, is the biggest problem in college football right now is tampering. Nobody wants to talk about it, but that's the problem. So if a great guy that goes into the portal could help you and you're interested in him, unless you're going to be willing to tamper, you ain't getting that guy. The deal's done. It's signed, sealed, and delivered. What gets left over in the portal is where Dabo gets criticized, but he's not wrong, and that is the vast majority, if not all of the players that were remaining, are not better than what Clemson's playing with. So why run the risk of maybe bringing in a bad element, an attitude situation, a character situation? You don't know this kid unless you've gone and you were recruiting this kid from the get-go out of high school and you have established relationships. That's a different conversation. But there is danger in the transfer portal. There just is. You got to ask yourself, why is the guy in there, right? Especially if he hasn't played a lot. If he has played a lot, is he better than what you have? If you're not going to tamper, do you have a chance at getting him? Well, those have all been risks they've chose to avoid and stick with the foundational aspects of high school recruiting. Now, a lot of people may not want to hear this. This is my opinion, but they went almost 9 years, 3 with Taj Boyd, 3 with Deshaun, 3 with Trevor, and you could add Kelly in there, 1 because he did take him to the playoff, but where they did not miss at quarterback in recruiting. And then they missed. And all of a sudden, everything gets affected. You can miss on the safety, right? You might be able to miss on a wideout. You miss on that position, and it will take its toll on you as a program. And so the reality is the percentages are at the quarterback position in recruiting, you're probably going to miss more than you hit. It's just there's so many unknown variables. And so they missed with DJ. And I think in fairness, there have been moments where you have to question, did they miss with Cade Klubnik too? And then Saturday happened. So now you've got rejuvenated energy. The kid has confidence. The team's looking at him differently. The locker room's got energy. Like the trickle-down effect of successful quarterback play, I don't know if anybody can properly put it into words. That's how impactful it is.
Thought it was funny. I was talking to Wes before the game, and he said, I wouldn't want to do your job because of what you had to deal with after the loss to Georgia. And then as he's walking by me at halftime, he lifts a drink up and he goes, you have the best job in college football. And he said, and that guy just turned into freaking Joe Namath.
Yeah.
And then he just walks off. He just leaves me with that. I think you might have compared him. I was listening to your show with
Joe Montana.
Barrett Sallee. You said another Joe Montana.
Yeah. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, freaking guy shows up and he's Joe Montana out there. I mean, it was unbelievable. I mean, it really was. I mean, it was a sight to see, whether you were watching it on TV or you were watching it in the stadium. I mean, there's 83,000 people in there, and I think even every one of them was going, where the hell has this guy been? Right? I mean, we all kind of were. And hey, full disclosure, guys, like, I've been on ABC for the last 10 years doing games. We don't get a lot of blowouts. Right? So you're getting, Oklahoma and Kansas State, and you're getting this and that. So I knew coming over to this deal that there were going to be some moments where we were, I thought we'd have one against NC State and Western Carolina. We didn't. We actually had a great game.
Great game.
And then you never expect this out of App, right? I mean, they're the
No.
giant killers. They go and they thrive on these games. And by the way, I still think they're going to be pretty good. And the reason why is that team just kept playing. They never looked at the scoreboard. They didn't point fingers. They just kept playing. And that quarterback's a good player. Anyway, so sitting there and this game's starting to get out of hand. And in broadcasting, when you have a blowout, like if you go in and you think you might have one, like you put together a material, we turn it into a studio show. So everything is free game. We're going to talk the playoff. We're going to talk the portal. We're going to talk the ACC. We're going to talk how many teams do you get in the playoff, and just a variety of different things. Because at that time the game's out of hand. Well, that's usually late third quarter, entirety of fourth quarter stuff. Clemson had 56 points on the board with 3 minutes and 31 seconds to go in the second quarter. And I pressed my talkback button to the truck, and I was like, what are we going to do now? Because this isn't a quarter of having to do this. It's an entire half. Like, we're trying to come up with stuff, and I'm telling our producer, I'm like, hey, dude, I need you to get as many paid elements, meaning commercial breaks and sponsors that have to get in the broadcast. You need to get as many of those in the game before midway through the third quarter so that we don't have to keep stopping the dang clock, right? We're sitting there trying to figure out. Mark Packer's texting me. He's like, dude, this game is going to end at 1:30 in the morning. I'm like, yeah, I know, Pack. Thanks. I know. I'm sitting up here watching it. I know.
Certain element in that broadcast where, because you mentioned it, App State, and I think a lot of us on the beat were thinking that this is a team that's going to at least hang with Clemson for maybe a half or into the third quarter going, and then the talent will take over.
Yeah.
But when you're sitting there and you like you said, it's 56-10, there's an element of that material where you go, we got to talk about just what we're seeing. Because I think we were checking in the media guide that there's so many records being shattered in this game. It was unlike anything I've ever seen before. I was joking
Right.
with David saying, is this what it looked like in the good old days when they were beating up on everybody in the ACC? And he's like, you're very right.
The good old days. Who are you? Holy smokes, the good old days. You mean 5 years ago?
That's why I put in air quotes for a Spotify audience. I put it.
Oh my God, that's great. I love it. I love it. Yeah, I mean, there was. I think Wes and I kind of looked at each other, and we really wanted to continue to accentuate the strengths and what we were seeing, and just talk about what a difference it is, and how capable Clemson is. If this is what they're going to put on the field each and every week because of how good they are on defense, and obviously there was a lot of talk about the wide receivers because they did make a big impact, but it was really not the impact they just made on their own. It was the impact they had on elevating the other guy's game, which to me is really, really important going forward. And so, the thing is, you're going to get probably a reeling NC State team coming to town. What is that, 2 weeks in Death Valley? Right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's going to be, and I think that game's on ABC at noon or something. So,
ABC at noon.
so you got to, and then you can't look at NC State and what they've done, then all of a sudden pull a Notre Dame, right?
Right.
And not show up, not prepare, and so there's a lot of football to be played, but it was encouraging to see how Clemson looked, and I will say this, I'll give Dabo Swinney credit. He knew it was going to happen. He's like, I know. Told us on Friday, I know we got a good team. I know we do. Our players know we do. And Barrett Carter walks into the office, and we're just all shooting the breeze. And Dabo looks at him and goes, "It's going to be a big night tomorrow night, isn't it?" And I looked at Barrett. I go, "Is it?" He goes, "Oh yeah." Like they knew. I don't think anything that happened Saturday surprised anybody on that staff or in that locker room. So obviously Dabo that week had a good pulse of his team.
Tom, we really appreciate you being with us, and I know you got to get to the airport. But so one final question. I was listening to Sirius XM College Football Radio yesterday, and Nicole Auerbach was talking about the expanded 12-team college football playoff. And in her early kind of look at it with the 12 teams, she has Miami coming out of the ACC.
Okay.
She had 5 SEC teams, 4 Big Ten teams, the Big 12 winner, ACC winner, and then Boise.
Okay.
Do you think a Clemson team that doesn't win an ACC championship has a path, or does Clemson really just need to go win it?
Well, I think 10-2 is the threshold for everybody, regardless of conference. 9 wins is not getting you there. Okay.
Right.
What I think would have to happen, let's just hypothetically say if Clemson and Miami play against each other and Miami's undefeated. Okay, let's just say that. Clemson beats them. I think they're both getting in. Okay. Now, if that's the opposite, all right, and let's just say Clemson's 11 or Miami's 11-1 or they're undefeated and then they beat Clemson. Depending on who else is 10-2 and how highly ranked Clemson becomes, that's going to be the question you'd have to ask yourself on whether or not you'd get more than one. We did a segment on College Football Live yesterday on, what's more wide open, the Big 12 or the ACC. And I said, I think that the Big 12 is, because I don't see a team in the Big 12 that has the offensive and defensive front that Miami and Clemson have. There is not a team up front on both sides of the ball in that conference. Now, they may have more top to bottom parity, right? But here's what we also don't know. While NC State has disappointed to some degree, Virginia Tech has not been as advertised. All of a sudden, Pitt and Syracuse look like entirely different teams. So who's to say down the stretch those teams aren't in the mix of not necessarily a college football playoff inclusion, but making the conference really strong top to bottom because the two of them are really good, right? So that's where there's just so much football to be played, and the common denominator will always be, and it always has been, and this is why we will have the same 4 teams when it gets down to from 12 to 4, is who's got the best players in the most depth up front on both sides of the ball and who has quality quarterback play. Because you ain't running that gauntlet of having to play 4 games. If you're an 11 seed, you don't have that personnel. You just don't. And I hear a lot of people complain, we're trading, excellence for access. Well, maybe there's some merit to that, but you're eventually going to get the excellence. It's just going to come in the form of the top 4 teams.
And the college football playoff race is going to continue to only heat up as conference play begins in 2 weeks for Clemson. I cannot wait for that. Should be a fun one. Tom, thank you so much for your time. Do you have any final thoughts for our listeners before we take off here?
Hang in there. Try to avoid knee-jerk reactions. They're always really, really dangerous. And sometimes what you see on one weekend, I'll remind people of this, and this has been burned into my brain, and it's so important for fans, is 2014, week 2, a below average Virginia Tech team goes up and throttles Ohio State. I mean, manhandles them. They beat them up front. I mean, it was embarrassing. The very next week, Virginia Tech is at home. I've got the broadcast. It's Ruffin McNeil and Lincoln Riley at East Carolina, and East Carolina comes in and beats Virginia Tech. 1 week after. 14 weeks later, Ohio State is playing for the national championship on their 3rd quarterback and win it. So just because you see something on one Saturday does not mean that's what the entirety of the season is going to be. Teams are different at different times of the year, and I always try to take a step back when I see something, especially on week 1 or week 2, and go, whoa, I try to just step back for a second, let's just kind of see how things play out.
And certainly we've seen different versions of Clemson. That's certainly probably underselling it there.
Yeah,
We want to thank Tom Luginbill for his time, and this is Grayson Man alongside David Hudd with the Orange Crush podcast. It's the open date, so we have some fun content coming your way, and we'll be back to normal, quote unquote, for the NC State game week. Guys, thank you so much for your time. Be sure to check out Tom and his broadcast. He's got Virginia and Maryland, I believe, this weekend.
Yep, correct. ACC Prime. Yep.
Landry, I like that kid.
Hey, but let me tell you something. That dude, I watched 3 games last year and his first 2 this year. He is a handful. Like, he is a problem. He's going to be really, really good. Now, they're a work in progress on defense, but offensively, they got 2 wideouts, and that quarterback, man, he's scary. He is scary. Yeah,
I like that kid. I do.
Yeah, me too. All right, boys, have a good one.
All right.
All right, safe
Thank you guys for
travels, buddy.
listening and take care.